It's okay, it takes time.
All right.
I know
Welcome
everything
back to
will
Strong.
be
I'm so excited to zoom around the world and meet another incredible guest. Today, we are meeting with Jamison, who's based in Ohio in the United States of America. We're going to be talking to Jamison about his experiences as a man, a father, a son, and all of those life experiences in between. Welcome, Jamison. It's so great to have you with me today.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks for inviting me.
take my
I'm
hand,
just so
just
excited. I
hold
came across your Instagram account when I was looking at some potential guests that I'd like to meet and talk to, and I came across yours, and it really got my attention. The heading "Fathers of Daughters" was something that I felt on a very personal level, but also on an educator level, and thinking, I really want to know more about the creator behind this account. So, Jameson, before we get into the role that you have as a father, maybe take us through your journey as a man. What does that mean to you? And when you wake up every day and you think, okay, I have to be Jameson today, how does that role come into effect?
Wow. So I guess I should probably start out with the fact that our family and myself, we are Christians. And so that really has come to define how I view manhood. And, as I'm in my mid 40s now. And so this has been a long process for me, really defining who I am as a man. Um, I have come, I think, to understand that for me, manhood is very much defined in, by a passage in the Bible, 1 Corinthians, where it states that love is kind, love does not envy, love does not boast. Um, it protects, it delights in truth, it does not delight in evil things. It always protects, it always perseveres, and for me, very much that is kind of, that defines what a man should be. um, I know in Western culture in the United States, there's recently been a strong push towards um, the alpha male lone wolf kind of nothing can touch me, I'm a man kind of leadership model. It really doesn't fit well with who we are as humans, how we've been built, how we've been wired, and the family structure that we're meant to be part of and lead. I have been blessed with an amazing wife and two incredible daughters, um, and I've been tasked with raising those daughters and walking beside my wife for the rest of our lives. And I can't do those things if I define myself um, as an island, as a lone wolf, as a nothing can touch me kind of alpha male. I am tasked with teaching my daughters and my wife how to love well, how to protect well, how to persevere well, because life is difficult and we will always have to come up against hard things and love and lead and learn through all of those things so that we can enjoy the wins and the success that come after that. Um, and so that's how I define manhood, and being a father and a husband.
You know, I'm listening to you, and one of the things I heard you say was you touched on your spirituality and your Christianity. And do you think that's where you learned how to be a man, or did you have role models? I mean, I'm just thinking about all those young boys out there that are finding their way on their life journey. And I know that you said you're in your mid 40s, and it was quite the journey that got you to where you
Yeah.
are. But was it your spirituality that led you to today, or was it a series of role models along the way that taught you what you've experienced and what you're demonstrating to your wife and daughters?
I would say that my spirituality, my faith walk has played a big part in that. I grew up in a broken household. My mother and father divorced when I was in high school. Both my parents are always loving, have always been loving to me. My father still is a bit of a workaholic, even in his 80s, and I learned some dangerous and destructive traits from that model of manhood. He loved us but he viewed himself as a provider first. And there wasn't a lot of balance in that for him, and he learned that from his parents. And so I started out my early adult life as a provider, very neglectful of my relationships and of my wife, and my very young daughters. And it's taken, my message, my life is very much that process of early adulthood to now learning how to balance the desire and the responsibility and the command of providing for your family with how do you love them well? How do you teach and honor the commitments? I made a commitment to my wife to love and to honor her for the rest of our lives. I can't do that if I'm not home. I have to put food on the table. I have to provide, but I can't love and honor my wife if I'm not there. And the same with my children. I want my daughters to see that their father is loving and engaged in their lives, and to expect that from their future spouse. And so it's very much been my faith that has finished that off for me. I've had some good mentors in my life. And of course, my father taught me to provide well. But my faith has finished that for me. And I'm certainly not finished. I have a lot to learn. But it's provided that balance.
I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, there's so much pressure on young boys who are growing into men, and then young men, and then men, as you describe, that unspoken pressure of what you described as having to provide. Although, we're evolving as people and genders, and women are working and men are working, and we're co-creating families and collaborating, I'm still hearing and I'm still seeing this kind of unspoken pressure on young boys. Do you see that, when you're looking around and you're providing for your daughters? Are you providing for them and expecting that they will find a similar spouse that would follow in your footsteps?
I think that's an individual choice for sure. My wife currently works. She has worked on and off throughout our relationship. I would love for her to come back home and become a stay-at-home mother, because I know that is her greatest desire. I have strong, independent daughters that will run the world when they come out of this house. There's no doubt about it. They have shown that they want to be independent, but they also want to be part of a partnership, and so I want them to enter into a relationship with someone that will cherish them and allow them to be the women that they were built to be. Whether they work outside of the home for a living, whether they become president, whether they become missionaries, or they stay home, whatever it is that they want to do. I want them to find a spouse that cherishes that. And that for me is the ultimate, is to show them what a strong partner looks like in how I treat my wife, how I treat them as individuals and as daughters of mine, so that they can lead well, because this world needs female leaders as much as it needs male leaders.
Jamison, I have a son myself, and I have a daughter, and I'm raising my daughters to be independent and to be able to take care of themselves. But at the same time, I believe I'm also very old-fashioned and traditional when it comes to partnership. And I think that's a little bit confusing, I think, for both, males and females, in that because the boundary is kind of gray, it's almost like females are allowed to have the options, but still there's the unspoken expectation that men are still supposed to be providing. How do we prepare young boys for that? Because, on the one hand, we're all raising independent, strong young women to become the rulers of tomorrow and the leaders of tomorrow. And that's what we want them to do. But we're still preparing young boys to be caretakers, to take care of their family, to provide for their family, to allow the women in their lives to have that option, as you described. I mean, how do we prepare them? Because we're going to be looking at a role model like you and think, okay, he's demonstrating all those things that you described, but at the same time, how do I do it? It's really hard. I'm a man, and I'm not living in the 1900s anymore. We're in the 21st century right now.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? It's constantly evolving, and it is incredibly difficult to walk through that. And I think, you know, Christians have a biblical mandate, men to work and provide for their families. That is a biblical truth that's in the Bible. But we are not to neglect our families as well, you know. And it is the myth that there is a work-life balance is absolutely a myth. There is no such thing in my mind as work-life balance. There is always going to be a push and pull. There will be times in our lives where we work harder, we spend more time at work than we do with our families, and there will be times, hopefully, where we spend more time with our family than we do at work. I spent a tremendous amount of my life working at work, where I was at work 70 hours a week. My wife was effectively a single mother, running the household, working as well, sometimes working, sometimes not, but I would leave before my children woke up, and I would come home after they were in bed. There were weeks where I would spend 10 hours total with my children during their waking hours. I was not being a good husband, not being a good father, and not being a good man in that time of my life. I'm in a place now where I work. I'm able to work remotely. I was able to work remotely prior to this COVID pandemic that we're experiencing, and I have made the conscious decision to sacrifice some of the income that I am capable of earning to spend more time with my family. I'm a volunteer coach for my girls' sports teams. I volunteer at church. I'm a youth mentor. I take part in some youth pastorship things. I run some men's groups, and I do a lot of the domestic work around the house in addition to working my full-time job. But I've taken a full-time job that is less lucrative, a little bit less rewarding, but allows me to fill these roles here at home that I feel are more important right now, to be able to spend time with my children, helping them do the things they love. And when I don't know, I know that everyone has gone through some of these COVID challenges. We homeschooled here. We were forced to homeschool here for 6 months because I had taken a role that allowed me to be at home all the time, enjoy a little bit less income. I was also able to homeschool my girls and not have a break in their education. And that is, I think that is part of the role that we have to fill. Responsibility and provision for our family isn't just about earning money. Providing for my family is providing income, is providing emotional well-being, is providing, all of the things that make us whole. It's not, we have to expand that definition of being a provider, because we don't thrive on a paycheck alone.
So what was the nudge that made you change your lifestyle? What was the thing that made you say, wait a minute, I'm missing something. I really need to reset, and, it's time to be around my family more. What was that thing for you?
It was the process of waking my children up at night when I'd get home, and saying goodnight. And they would ask, are we going to see you tomorrow? And I'd say, girls, I'm sorry, it's Thursday. I have to go to work tomorrow. And they would just start to cry. Your children, they shouldn't feel that way about your absence, all the time. And I think that was the thing. We go through hard things. But it had become my life. 6 or 7 days a week for 6 or 7 years, where I just wasn't ever at home. And knowing that I was putting my wife in a place where she was the sole emotional provider for the family, where I was just absent. I was only doing less than 50% of the work. Earning an income is not the difficult thing in this world. Providing for the people that you love in a holistic way, that is really difficult. And it was just one of those things where I finally got to the point where I refused to continue to neglect my family. And in much of Western society, that is still acceptable, that men are given a pass to neglect their families, to earn an income. As long as they're providing well, the rest of those things can fall to the women in the family or to the community around them. I refuse to accept that. So.
Wow. So what would you say would be your message to a young person watching this right now in terms of career, family, and priorities of life?
I don't, it's a complicated message, I think. I don't have a college education. I moved into blue collar service work really pretty quickly. I've done some white collar things. I've done a lot of different things in my life, but I specifically, I really fell well into blue collar work, and I did it well. That leads to many of the work-life imbalances that young men have. And blue collar work, service work, really has a strong call to young men who feel strong and independent and want to make their own way. So, for me, I think the message that I try to convey is you don't have to settle for the status quo. We got to a point when we said we're going to make a change. We essentially sold all of our belongings as a family. We kept what essentially fit inside a large van, and we moved across the country. We said we're going to move to a place where we can survive, where we can thrive better than we are in the middle of our, at the Rockies is basically where we were living in an affluent community, working ourselves kind of to death to make it work. And we said, we're going to be intentional, and we're going to do something scary, and we're going to just quit this. I'm going to go someplace. We're going to start all over again. When we sold everything we owned, quit our jobs, and we moved. And every single person that we knew said, "Gosh, I wish I could do that. Gosh, I wish I could do that." And the answer is you can do that. They were unwilling to do it. The things that they owned, the lives they lived, had such a strong hold on them that while they wanted to just start over and rebalance their lives and focus on the things that they knew were important, they were unwilling to make those hard decisions to say, we are just gonna cut this stuff off and start over again. And our daughters learned that you can do really hard things that no one expects you to be able to do. Other people want to do, but they're unwilling to make those choices. It's scary. It's dangerous. It wasn't easy. There was a time where we felt like maybe we had made a poor choice, but we persevered, and we're on the other side of that, and we're such a better family for having gone through that crucible of really distilling ourselves down, refining who we were, and understanding what's important to us. And they have learned that nothing is impossible for them. Our daughters are the strongest young women that I have ever met, and it's because of the things that we have done as a family.
Sounds to me like you had a family detox.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. And we did it as a family. This was not something that my children's parents inflicted on them. As a family, the four of us sat down and we said, this is going to be hard. We believe it's going to be really good. These are the things that we have to do. What do you think, girls? At the time, my youngest was 8, 9. Most people don't involve their children at that level. And they both said, this sounds really hard, but we want to do it because we want our family to be stronger and better. And we want to try something that's dangerous and exciting. And so now they're part of that story.
What would you have done if one of them said no?
We would have just left them there, I think. Just, no. I don't know. That, I think that's the scary part about involving others in your adventure. That's the scary part about becoming a husband. I'm no longer a single man and can just do whatever he wants. You have to be selfless in those things. And when you have children, you have to be selfless. We learn very quickly this life is not about us when we have children. I don't cook for me. I cook for my girls. Like, the cars we buy, they're not the cars that I want. They're the cars that fit our family the best. We make sacrifices, and that's one of those ultimate sacrifices, is asking your family for permission to do hard things.
I'm going to come back to this, but I just feel like my next question about resilience feels like the right time to be asking you what you've come through as a family, as a man. I mean, in just having to redefine a career because of the needs of your family, of wanting to be with your children. How did you maintain that resilience? What did you do to gain resilience? Or, was it just one thing that you did every day, or did you just kind of wing it? What was your strategy?
I think it was probably one thing every day, and I think it looked a lot like winging it also, from the outside. It's a long process. It feels a lot like the process of tempering, where metal is heated to exceptionally hot temperatures and then cooled quickly. We put ourselves through a process of growth and retraction enough times in the last 3 or 4 years, and we did it intentionally. That I think a good way to look at it is when we moved to this small town that we're living in now. We moved from what we considered a large town of 200,000 people to a town of 14,000 people, where we didn't know anyone. There weren't a lot of resources for us. All the things that we were used to, we don't have here. And the family we were staying with some of our family. They let us stay in 2 small rooms in the 3rd floor of their farmhouse. So it was a family of 4 living in essentially 2 bedrooms. And we'd gone from a 3,000 square foot house to this. And we did that for about 10 months, which was really challenging for us. We had a lot of breakdowns as a family, but at the end of every day, whether they were at school or we were homeschooling or going off to jobs or seeing friends, at the end of the day, we came back to these 2 little rooms, and it was the 4 of us. That was all we had. We're two bedrooms, and that was our entire world, and the 4 of us. And at the end of the day, we could decompress, talk through our problems, talk about talk through the emotions and the practicality of how we were going to attack the next day. And we did that for 10 months, and it really sort of set the tone for how we have continued to live our lives. And that was almost 3 years ago. Since then, we've had, the global pandemic. And at the time when our community went into lockdown, we had moved into an apartment of 800 square feet, which for some of your viewers, some of your people, that may seem like a normal thing for a family of 4, but for us and for Western standards, that's tiny. There's no way that people expect for us to be able to survive well in something like that. And we did. We thrived. Both my wife and I worked from home. We homeschooled, and everything we owned was in that 400 or 800 square feet. And we did that for 12 months. We were able to do that because of our time prior in our 2 bedrooms. It helped us, again, to remember who we are as a family, what our strengths were. And if one of us cracked, the other three knew what salve to put on that crack to heal it, because that's who we are. We are a family. And each of us has strengths. Each of us have weaknesses. And because we love each other well, we understand how to cover and care for the weaknesses that we individually have. And then as a whole, we are so much stronger. And that is the basis of resiliency.
You make it sound so easy. Make it sound, I mean, I'm just listening to you and it just sounds seamlessly easy, but you know, and I know that you're retelling a story, and to anyone listening, it sounds seamless, but you know, it wasn't. It probably was really messy along the way. So give us some examples of, you know, what it looked like when one of the members would crack. And, you know, because I think sometimes we kind of think, well, everybody else gets it right, and why is it so messy for us, right? But it's when we're retelling stories, we miss out the messy parts. So maybe give us some idea of what messy looked like.
I remember, I think probably the lowest point, the hardest part that we had dealt with when we were living with family. We had not yet moved to our larger apartment. We had the opportunity to try to buy a home, and we felt like this buying a home in this new community that wasn't just a bucket list, but it was a necessity. We had to buy a home in order to move on to the next step. And of course, that's an artificial goalpost that we had placed on ourselves. Through a series of circumstances, we went through the entire process of buying a home. 2 weeks before we were supposed to get our keys to this new home, this new dream that was going to start us off well, we were informed that it wasn't going to happen. And not only was it not going to happen now, it was never really going to happen for us. And we had really sort of laid everything on the line to get this home. Emotionally, financially, physically, we were exhausted going through this process. We were told right at the end, as we were making plans, decorating, talking about schedules, all those things, it was really pulled out from underneath us. And it was an emotionally devastating thing for us. Both my wife and I really struggled. My wife especially she just broke down. And our girls were away at a little summer camp when we found this out. When they came home, we had, they were excited to plan their rooms and paint and do all those things. And they came home and we had to tell them, I'm sorry, but it's not going to happen. It didn't work out. And both girls, they were sad and there were tears, but they bounced back so incredibly quickly. And they did because they saw how much it had affected my wife and I. Because I felt like a failure. I felt like I have been through so much, and I fell back into that old structure of I'm not a man unless I put a fancy roof over my family's head, and unless I have a nice car, and unless I have a nice job, and all of that was contained in the vision of a home for me. And when that was taken away from me, it broke me. And my youngest daughter, I remember sitting on the bed and both my wife and I were just in tears, and the girls came into our bedroom, and my youngest daughter said, "Daddy, I know we really wanted this and it makes me really sad, but you do a really good job for us. And it's going to be okay. We've made it this far. We don't need a house. We have a roof over our head now, and we love each other." And I was taught at that moment what resiliency looked like for them. My youngest child, who she's 10 at the point, was telling her father that he was good enough and he was strong enough, and we didn't need those other things that I had put up on a pedestal. And we've had a couple of those. So
Amazing. How good was Santa to her that year?
Santa, yeah, he was good. Yeah,
I mean, you
yeah.
talked to us about so many obstacles that you've come through. What would you say has been the greatest challenge for you, Jamison? I mean, you've mentioned so many milestones, but if you had to look,
Mm.
if you had to scan through all of your life experiences this far as a man, what would you say has been the most challenging?
I think, when I look at my life, we are still very blessed. Living in the United States, living where we do, we have tremendous resources. Um, we feel alone, but there are opportunities and resources and communities around us that really stand up to take care of us when we're in need, and especially my family. There are definitely people in the United States in our communities, no matter where you live, that as wealthy as we are, as rich as we are, as blessed as we are, they still struggle, and they still fall through the cracks. So I don't ever want to say that tangibly, our family has struggled exceptionally, because we go through the same things that everyone else goes through. We are not affected by war or famine. My family is not affected by homelessness, although nearly, but not. We don't go hungry. The biggest challenges for me, the hardest things for me have been learning how to pare my pride down, learning how to embrace the biblical manhood that I feel like I have been called to. The understanding that this life is not lived for me. I am not called to live a life to bring me wealth, to bring me fame. My legacy, my work, the things what I've been put on this earth for is for the benefit of my children. I believe strongly that my life on this earth is to raise healthy, strong, capable, independent, God-fearing women, and to love my wife in an exceptional way and allow her to do those same things and develop as the woman that God designed her to be. But it's taken a long time to understand that I'm not the focus of my life. Um, we're we're made with a strong sense of pride, um, and we feel like the world should be about us. And I still fall into that. I'm certainly not immune. Um, but that hardest pairing, the hardest times that I've had personally have been paring that away reluctantly, to learn that it's not about me. Um, and our life is not as difficult as we make it out to be.
How much do you believe that your daughters will find spouses that fit this incredible description you have of what a man would be like to take care and provide and love and support their family?
I would like to think that I have not set that high a bar, that there are other men in our community around us that are teaching their sons that same thing. We've been placed in an area that we have an incredible friend community here. We're very good friends with a lot of people here, and a lot of them are raising strong young men. There are so many people out there like yourself who have sons, have young men that are under their care, that are looking for the right way to do things. They're not um, following what the world says that their boys should be, because there's still so many destructive and dangerous um, ideas about what a man should be and about what a woman should be. Um, and it does feel like there is an upwelling of demand to grow and train up strong young men. I have no doubt that they'll find it. I have no doubt that they'll find it. I certainly am not the epitome of what I believe a man should be. I have a long way to go, and I don't think I'll ever get there. But I want my children, I want my daughters to strive strive for a partner that is right for them, and then to understand that marriage is not easy, partnership is not easy, and that will be constant work for the rest of their lives to nurture that relationship with their husband, grow as women, raise up strong children, and continue doing what we do here.
If there was a young boy listening to you right now, what do you want to tell him about what you know about being a man in the world of dating? Because I think that's another topic that is one of those things that both genders kind of struggles to understand each other. So what do you know about women being the father of 2 daughters, having a successful marriage, that you think if there's a young boy out there, this is great advice, you should follow this?
As someone who has a newly minted teenage daughter, this is something that's constantly talked about in our household. Listen well. It's cliche that God gave us, 2 ears and only one mouth, but it's true. And we still talk far too much. Listen well to the women that you surround yourself with. Listen well to the men and the mentors in your lives. We are surrounded by strong men, whether we know it or not. We're surrounded by potential mentors if we just listen, and always honor the people that you're with. I think it goes back again to love. Love doesn't boast. Love doesn't gossip. Love doesn't delight in evil. Love is always caring. Love is always strong. Love is always protecting. Young men, old men, not quite as old men. We should always be loving well, and that is protecting, but it's also being vulnerable. And that's such a hard balance. Again, I fail at it daily, but we should always be striving for that balance.
Tell me about fathers of daughters. Why did you start an Instagram account under that title?
It felt like a hole in the conversation. I started it at a vulnerable place in my life when we decided to uproot our lives in the state of Colorado and move to Ohio. That's kind of when I started that process, because I felt like I wasn't loving my daughters well. I felt like I wasn't loving my wife well, and I needed a place to put that. I had all of these feelings about who I should be, who my children are, who my wife is, and how that conversation needed to be had. There wasn't a strong presence anywhere, and I really almost started it as an outlet just for myself. I didn't tell my wife when I started it. I didn't tell my friends when I started it. I just started writing, because that is how I felt about my children, and I needed a place to put it, because at the time I wasn't putting it into my children. I was still absent, and that really was kind of a catalyst for, I think we can do things differently. And it has, kind of grown from that.
Wow. So do you feel today, after the journey that you've come through, that you are on the journey that you were hoping you'd get to when you made that first choice?
Definitely. I'm in a place now where I spend as much time with my children as I do doing the other things in my life, and that won't always be the case, and it's not always the right choice for people all the time. I think that's one of the things that's important about this journey for me, is that I'm surrounded by men that do all sorts of different things and live all sorts of different lives. I'm in a place now where I know farmers that, they there are seasons of their lives where they don't even know where their children are sleeping because they're in the fields so much, providing for not just my family, but for other families. But for where I started and the goal of my life, I wanted to be able to come home and to say yes to my children for whatever it is that they were asking about. Not to give them everything they asked for, but to say, yes, we can try this. Yes, we can do this. I'm now a volleyball coach, which I had never picked up a volleyball in my life. But because I had the time to say yes, I'm doing it now. And so I know my daughter's friends' names. I know the boys' names in their class, and they know me, most importantly. And my daughter's friends know the kind of man that I am. And they know the kind of interactions I expect and the kind of friendships I expect. And the young men that are interested in my now teenage daughter and the daughter that's about to be a teenager, they know what I expect in my household. And that is what is most important to me, is that I've set the example for the community that is looking at my family. That if you're going to come into our family, if you're going to come into this thing that we've built, this is the expectation. And the bar is not so high that you can't reach it. You just have to try.
I love that. You just have to try. Thank you so much, Jamison. I think this conversation, it felt very wholesome. It felt very authentic. Is there anything that you wish you could have done different just before we come to a close?
I don't want to say that I don't have regrets. There are lots of things that I should have done differently in my life, for sure. But I also know that we are a story still being written. We are a collection of, cumulative experiences. I wouldn't be the man that I am if I hadn't had the struggles that I had in the past. I wouldn't have learned the lessons that I have now. And so I don't think that there are things that I wish I had done differently, which is hard because as a young man, as a human, I've hurt people in my past. We as humans, we do dumb things and we make bad decisions. But if we learn from those decisions, we are better when we come out. And I'm a product of all of those bad decisions. Now doing things the right way.
Thank you, Jamison. Thank you for being here with me today and giving us a glimpse of your life experiences and what family means to you. I know that I'm walking away feeling really connected to somebody I've never met over on the other side of the world. And that's what #Strong is all about. It's about connecting stories and helping families and the youth start to see real life role models just like you. So thank you for allowing us to have this glimpse. And I can't wait to see where your family grows into. I think it's just very exciting to see how all the sacrifices that you and your wife made for the right reasons and where that'll take you. So please keep us posted.
I will. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And if anyone wants to learn more about Jamison, please find him on his Instagram account, Fathers of Daughters. And that brings us to the end of another incredible conversation. Today we were speaking with Jamison, who's based out in Ohio in the United States of America. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week when we bring another incredible conversation to Strong.